Expedia and Visit Scotland invite you to come experience the beauty that awaits in Scotland. The sweep of wild coastlines, quiet lochs, and untamed landscapes. Fresh cuisine that feels rooted in the land. Come experience the kind of stillness that stays with you long after you leave. Plan your Scottish escape today at expedia.com/Visit Scotland.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
Hi everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today we are going to be talking about a common dynamic that I see when there is a higher earner, which is most often the man statistically, and what I see in my practice, although women are growing as the higher earner. More and more of them are the breadwinner, but so far it's still mostly men in that situation. And they say that their job is more important because it earns more. And this also came up in my Facebook secret group. So if you're ever wanting more engagement and more conversation, join the Facebook secret group. It is a smart group of people, a lot of thoughtful discussion. But anyway, and before I get to the meat of the episode, please do subscribe. There are over 220 extra episodes. It is the best bang for your buck in terms of hearing what I think about sex, relationships, parenting, career, life, everything, and there are many, many good episodes out. The last two, let's see, what were the last two subscriber? We're saying you're better than your husband is dysfunctional, and stop scrolling, you're wasting your life. A big pep talk on how to use social media in a more healthy way, which obviously touches on that many of you guys met me through social media. So I certainly don't want to sound like it's useless. I find it very useful. However, all good things aren't good anymore when they get to excess. And I do see so many more people that just lose hours and hours of their day down rabbit holes, scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And so that was, I thought, a useful episode. And of course, there's 220 more. Okay, so a lot of guys say that because they make more money, their job is more important. This is so stupid. I can't even get over how stupid it is because, let's be real. Like, so many jobs are so stupid. And the only reason, I could see if it's a guy, my favorite example is you're doing pediatric neurosurgery, right? And you're helping like babies' brains. Like, yeah, your job's more important, but you know why it's more important? Because you're helping babies' brains, not because it makes more money. If you made less money in a hospital in Wichita than you did in a hospital in New York City, you would still have a very important job, right? Because you're actually helping the world. At least that's what I think. And anybody who's listening to the Dr. Psych Mom Show by a psychologist and somebody who values relationships and human life may well agree with me. Do you know other jobs that make a lot of money? There's so many jobs in finance. There's jobs just in business. There's jobs where if you dropped dead, nobody would kind of notice. Somebody else would come up and replace you. And the whole thing is making money and making rich people richer. And yeah, okay, you can make more money doing that than a teacher. But who's impacting more of the world, Who's impacting more lives? People remember, if your first grade teacher is a real bitch, that's going to be a huge abusive trauma to you. And if your first grade teacher is really awesome, you could learn how to read, you could develop healthy self-esteem. Home is a respite away from where your parents may fight. I think that jobs where you're actually impacting human life are very important. More important, maybe you're the top, salesman of massaging pillows at the massaging pillow company, but if there were no massaging pillows, nobody would die and nobody would be worse off. And is that a value judgment? Sure. Is this entire podcast a value judgment of whatever I think about? Yes. I also think that relationships are important and human connection is important and being empathic is important. Well, if I believe that being empathic and being a good parent are important, then I'm also going to believe that jobs where you touch human lives are more important than jobs where you don't. Also, like parenting you don't get paid for. Can you imagine like telling your wife, like, I want you to spend less time with our kids because you don't get paid for it? That's as dumb as it sounds to say, like, I want you to spend less time on teaching because you don't get paid for those extra hours. It's just dumb. Like, if you want to spend more time with your wife and you think that she's spending more time at her job, think about what you would say if she made twice what she made or twice what you made, twice what you made. So if she made twice what you made, then would you be okay with never seeing her, with never hanging out with her? Like, so let's say that she really is one of these teachers, and I discussed in my podcast on When Your Wife is a Teacher, let's say she really is an over-preparer, over-anxious. She's spending 6 hours a night on her lesson plan for the next day. Yes, she's a loving person, and she helps children, and they really benefit, and she has beautiful lesson plans, but you think that you never get to spend time with her. Well, you don't. And so that would be important no matter how much money she made. The thing that's very narcissistic and very condescending is to come in and make it about money, because that's just dumb. It's so funny that almost 100% of these guys, if the teacher said, actually, I'm getting really into weightlifting, just like you've told me to all the years, and you weightlift, and now I want to get into weightlifting. So I'm going to do 2 hours a night at the gym, working on my ass muscles, right? So this guy would be like, oh, great. Oh, she's going to have a gym body. That's just the same amount of time. So if you put 2 hours in there and then she spent 2 more hours with the kid, and then let's say she spent 2 hours, I don't know, making an OnlyFans or whatever gets you off, then would you be okay with having 6 hours a week, a night away from your wife? Because a lot of guys would, if it was just the stuff that they chose. And so they are using her lesser salary as, you know, the way to bully her into spending time on only what they want, which is frequently just to be their companion animal, literally, like to be a love robot and to be a Stepford wife or a pet. And just to, the ideal would be that they work at their well-paying job, then they come home and then they have sex with her. But guess what? She's not a whore. She's not a robot. She's not a pet. She also has a life, and she also has her own values. So if she wants to have sex with you every night, you would be doing it already. But if she wants to be like everybody else in the world, including you, and self-actualize, then she's a human being. So you can't, and many guys do this. Many of these high-earning narcissistic types say, listen, just be around for me. That's the only thing you, quote, need to do. But there's a human need for self-actualizing. There's a human need for meaning making. And it doesn't matter how much money she makes or doesn't make. So you making lots of money, also, by the way, this goes the other way. You should not be allowed to do whatever you want because you make money. So even the theoretical pediatric neurosurgeon who's fixing babies' brains, if he had a family, he should be doing a few less surgeries per week so that he could see his children and his wife. So there's nobody that has a wife or a husband and a family that should be spending zero time with them. But if that's your position, that's a valid and healthy position. Do not make it about that the person's job is less useful because it makes no money. Now, if you actually think that their job is less useful and they agree with you, then they may stop working. So there are plenty of women who engage in like lower level jobs that are low level for them, meaning they're not self-actualizing. They're just making money, right? They're just adding to the family budget and they don't want to be. So not every woman thinks, or man, thinks that their career is self-actualizing. So then if you start to out-earn her, then she may well say, all right, I want to stay home. But if she stays home, she's still not just a prostitute or a pet or a companion. She's not. She's a person. So at that point, she may start volunteering more. She may hang out more with the kids. This whole thing goes, you just got to think of how silly it is to think of men with stay-at-home wives, which is what many of these guys want. They want the woman to stop working entirely because then she could be around for them in whatever way they need. But guess what? I work with guys with stay-at-home wives. The wife also isn't around the way constantly all the time because she's her own person. And so she starts to do more at the kids' school. She starts to hang out with her friends more. She starts to, volunteer or go to the gym or engage in church or synagogue or whatever. So the point is that you still cannot, even if you out earn somebody, you don't own them and they're not your slave, and you can't just tell them that because they don't make money, they should do whatever you want. And so plenty of guys would not say that to a stay-at-home wife, but yet would say it to a wife who's a lower earner. And that's just absurd because a stay-at-home wife makes absolutely no money. And they wouldn't say to her, well, because nothing you do makes money, you should do nothing. They might want to say that if they're very narcissistic, but they wouldn't. They wouldn't say, you cooking dinner, does not earn us any money, so you shouldn't do it. Even if it would be cheaper, in theory, to just, make a whole bunch of peanut butter sandwiches for the whole week, right? You would never say, no, cooking a homemade dinner, even if it takes you an hour, you definitely shouldn't do it because you're not getting paid for it. Or you shouldn't help our kid with homework because you're not getting paid for it. Or you shouldn't anything. You shouldn't go take a walk because you're not getting paid for it. You shouldn't go to the gym because you're not getting paid for it. I mean, you know what's coming next. Then she would say to you, well, why do I have sex with you? I don't get paid for it. And so for the guys that are saying, oh, well, she does get paid for it, which is not as many, obviously, of my clients, but it is the guys on the internet say that the woman should have sex because the guy makes more money. That, again, is called a prostitute. And you don't want a prostitute if you're married. You don't want a woman who thinks that she's giving you her body or her time. You don't want a time prostitute either. You don't want a woman who says, oh, he's such a baby when he doesn't hang out with me, so I have to make my whole schedule around spending an hour with him and pretending that I give a shit about listening to him before I can go do what I actually want. Nobody wants that. People want a marriage that's between friends and equals foremost, before any romantic component sets in. So you got to respect your wife's occupation no matter how much money she makes, because there's plenty of shit she does that's free that you would want her to do, or that you would at least know that you can't tell her not to do. So you want to do a deep dive if you've tried to control your spouse in this way, whether or not you're a man or a woman, because the vast majority of people I see in this situation are men and as the higher earner, but I have seen some women that are higher earners that also say, well, if he's a stay-at-home dad, then his time is, he should work around my schedule. Well, no, he's another human being. So he shouldn't really work around your schedule just because you make more money. That doesn't make any sense, and if you want a personal assistant, then hire a personal assistant. But if you want to be in a relationship, then that person's going to have their own interests, and they may not always be at the same time schedule as when you want them to be available for you. Now, again, if you are this kind of person and you have these control issues, you are the preoccupied attachment partner and probably pretty self-involved. So you probably got told your whole life that you're very smart and very high achieving and very admirable. And so you start to think that you really have more value than other people. And a job where you get compensated very well often makes you more like that. You get even more smug and more self-centered, right? And more self-aggrandizing. And you really start to think that you are, in fact, more important because you make more money, and you're not. Because you can always find somebody that has a job that has a lot more impact than your job. Most people could do that. Even the president, even the guy doing the pediatric neurosurgery, right? You could always find a guy that does better pediatric neurosurgery, or is, a president of a bigger country, or whatever the case may be, or was a better president than you of the same country. If you want to compare yourself and you always come out on top, there's something wrong with your comparison system. That's being pretty self-absorbed, right? To say that you're the most important, and because you make X amount of money or you do X amount of things and everything should work around you. No, then you shouldn't be married really at all if that's how you think. Because the central precept of a marriage needs to be that both of the people have equal worth. And if your only metric is financially, then that doesn't work. Then then the spouse turns into an employee, and we don't want that. And you wouldn't want your kids to see that, and you wouldn't want them to get treated like that. You wouldn't want them to be in a marriage where one person is saying, because I have more money, I should be able to buy your time. And because your job makes less than my job, then it's not important. More women are in caretaking jobs, and those jobs can be very, very important for the people receiving care. And it's interesting because so many guys are like really, really nice to their kids' teachers, but then aren't that nice to their own wife who's a teacher or a nurse or something like that. Like the same guy that would be like, talking up their kid's teacher or the nurse that helped them when they went to the hospital will kind of diminish the exact same feel that's done by their wife, because there's this resentment around her not being constantly available for him. So this is exactly the kind of dynamic that's very well suited for couples therapy. So, and the other person, the lower earning person, didn't set the boundaries. They probably also have low self-esteem and believe that they are less worthy. And so then they colluded, especially in early years of the marriage, in this idea that because you make more, then your job comes first. But now as they get older, then they may be saying, wait a second, why the hell is your job so important? So we have all this money, we still don't get along. We have all this money and what? And we still don't feel close, and you're getting more disrespectful and more narcissistic with every passing year of you making more money. That's how a lot of women feel in this scenario. So this marriage is kind of like waiting to die if it doesn't get, if people do not rejigger this dynamic in a way that is more, more healthy and more fulfilling for both. Because underneath the guy who's trying to control his wife is somebody who feels unloved and lonely. And underneath the woman who is, feeling like she's getting shit on all the time, maybe somebody that is consciously, emotionally withdrawing from the guy. So maybe she could be spending 6 hours a night doing her lesson plans, but if she smiled at him when he came in, then he wouldn't have anything to say about it. So everything is bi-directional, and everything is a complex interplay between the attachment styles involving the history of the relationship, what each person saw growing up, and all these things that I talk about all the time on my show and in session every day. All right, I hope you guys found this interesting and useful. And again, please subscribe for 25% more episodes. And as always, if you need a therapist or a coach, reach out to my practice, bestlifebehavioralhealth.com. We also hired a male coach, Ben Borkan, and therapist. And so if a lot of you guys have said that you wanted me to hire a guy, and I did. So I am responsive, and hopefully you guys reach out if some men really do feel like they can only talk to a male therapist or coach. And I get that, because there's a lived experience factor there. So definitely reach out, Samantha@drpsychmom.com, if you want to schedule with him or me or anybody else. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Struggling with weight loss? Prolon's 5-day fasting mimicking diet is a clinically developed nutrition program designed to promote fat loss while protecting lean body mass. Developed at USC's Longevity Institute, it assists the body in entering a fasting-like state that helps reset metabolism and target visceral fat. In just 5 days, Prolon offers a science-backed approach to weight loss without extreme restriction or guesswork. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/now.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.